You're paying a fixed monthly rate for Claude Code, and you can't swap the model when it starts lying about what it did. So I looked at 7 alternatives across cost, control, and real workflow fit to tell you exactly which one fixes your specific pain point. One of them costs literally $0, and one of them completely changed how I think about the terminal. The 7 alternatives are Aider, OpenCode, Cursor, Codex, Warp, GitHub Copilot, and one more that wraps Claude Code itself in a way that actually makes it better. Claude Code is a terminal native agent locked to Anthropic's models, and the question is whether any of these break that lock. Test 1, Cost and Lock-in. The day your Claude Code bill hits the max tier and a new model drops that's twice as good, you literally can't use it. You're locked to Claude, full stop. That's up to $2,400 a year for a single model you didn't choose to stay with. So how do the alternatives stack up on price and flexibility? I looked at what Aider actually costs to run, and it's $0 up front. You bring your own API key, pick any model you want, and the tool itself is free and open source. Claude Code runs on a subscription that locks you into Anthropic's models with no way out, and the control gap is about as wide as it gets. Aider takes this one, and I didn't expect the gap to be this clean. Free with full model choice versus a fixed subscription with 0 model choice. That puts the alternatives up 1-0 on the scoreboard, and Aider is already looking like the default pick for anyone whose main complaint is the bill. I've burned through enough Claude Code credits on a single bad session to know that cost surprise is real and it hits fast. Drop a comment if the token burn has caught you off guard too. Test 2, Openness and Control. You've probably hit this. Claude Code has a bug in how it handles a specific workflow. You go looking for a fix, and you find out the source is closed, so you can't patch it, fork it, or even see what it's doing with your data. That's the kind of thing that kills trust on a long project, and it's exactly where open source tools have a structural edge. The part that got me here is how clean the split is. Aider and OpenCode are fully open source, Git native, and your data stays with whatever provider you point your key at. Claude Code routes everything through Anthropic's managed session, closed source, no customization, and you're trusting them with every prompt. For teams with any data sensitivity, that's not a small thing. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Aider and OpenCode take this one decisively. Open source with full control beats. Closed source managed every time you care about what's actually happening under the hood. That's 2 for the alternatives, 0 for Claude Code, and the pattern is getting pretty clear pretty fast. Test 3, Editor integration. You're mid-function, you want an inline suggestion that knows the file you have open, and Claude Code just doesn't do that. It's a terminal command, not an editor. If you live in VS Code or a full IDE all day, switching to a terminal agent every time you want help is friction that adds up to real lost time. I ran this one twice because the workflow difference is bigger than I expected. Cursor is a full IDE with inline suggestions and edits right in your file. Claude Code is a terminal CLI that you context switch into. If you're editor-centric, Cursor fits your day naturally. If you're command-driven and repo-focused, Claude Code is actually the right shape. It's a workflow split, not a quality race. Cursor takes the editor integration win. It's built for people who live inside their IDE, and Claude Code simply isn't that tool. Claude Code gets on the board though, because for repo-wide agentic work from the terminal, it's still the right fit. So the score moves to 2-1 in favor of the alternatives. Test 4, Agentic autonomy. You kick off a long refactor, walk away for 20 minutes, come back, and the agent stopped halfway and asked you a question it should have figured out on its own. Or worse, it told you it finished and it didn't. That's the confident but wrong output pattern. and it's exactly where native agent loop design matters most. When I dug into this, the architecture difference is pretty real. Claude Code has a native agent loop built for long-running autonomous execution inside a repo. It's the whole point of the tool. Codex, the direct strategic rival from OpenAI, is often used as a plugin running inside Claude Code rather than as a standalone replacement, which means it's delegating to Claude Code's loop anyway. So on raw agentic depth, Claude Code still holds the structural advantage here, even though Codex is catching up fast. Claude Code's native agent loop wins this dimension. Codex is a real competitor, but it's often running on top of Claude Code rather than replacing it, and that's a meaningful structural difference. The score goes to 3-1 for the alternatives overall, with Claude Code holding its ground on the one job it was actually designed to do. Test 5, Terminal UX. You're running Claude Code in a plain terminal and you get a wall of output with no way to review a diff inline, no notification when the agent finishes, and no input controls to interrupt cleanly. You're flying blind. For people who live in the terminal all day, that raw CLI experience is a daily friction point that nobody talks about. Watch what happens when you put Warp next to the standard Claude Code CLI. Warp auto-detects Claude Code running inside it and wraps it with code review panels, input controls, and notifications, all without replacing the agent underneath. Claude Code alone is a standalone CLI with none of that, and what's interesting is Warp is just making the terminal experience around it actually usable, not swapping out what's doing the work. Warp takes the terminal UX win, it turns Claude Code's plain CLI into something with real controls and feedback, and that's a clear improvement for anyone who lives in the terminal. Claude Code gets a second point on the board though, because the agent underneath is still doing the work, putting us at 3-2 in favor of the alternatives. So the alternatives are ahead on cost, openness, and editor fit, but model flexibility and ecosystem fit are still on the table. And those two dimensions are the ones that actually decide whether you can ditch Claude Code entirely or just work around it. The model flexibility test in particular could flip the whole conversation about which tool you reach for every single day. Test 6, model flexibility. A new model drops from a different provider and it's genuinely better for your use case. Cheaper, faster, smarter on the specific task you run all day. With Claude Code, you can't touch it. You're on Claude, period, and that's the architectural bet you make when you commit to a closed tool, one that can cost you real capability over time. I looked at OpenCode specifically here, and the architecture is genuinely different. It's open source, it supports third-party providers, and you can point it at whatever model makes sense for the job. Claude Code is built around a single TypeScript process tied to Anthropic's models with no way to customize the underlying setup. So if model choice matters to you even a little, OpenCode is structurally the better fit. OpenCode wins model flexibility, and it's not subtle. Third-party providers versus one model is a real architectural difference that compounds over time as better models keep shipping. That puts the alternatives at 4 wins to Claude Code's 2, and the gap is now wide enough that the final test is really about who belongs on which side of the fence. Test 7, the last one, ecosystem fit. You're already deep in GitHub, pull requests, actions, the whole workflow, and you want your AI coding tool to live inside that, not next to it. Claude Code supports MCP, but it's not embedded in GitHub's native workflow the way a tool built for that job would be. And that gap shows up every time you want a suggestion without leaving your PR. Alright, so the split I found here is pretty clear. GitHub Copilot wins daily inline autocomplete and GitHub workflow integration. It's embedded in the IDE, it knows your repo context, and it fits the pull request loop naturally. Claude Code wins on longer agentic tasks, reasoning across repos, and executing multi-step work that Copilot can't match. These two tools are honestly doing different jobs, and picking the wrong one for your workflow costs you daily. GitHub Copilot takes ecosystem fit, IDE embedded autocomplete, and GitHub workflow integration, beats terminal-based agentic work for developers who spend their day in the editor. Claude Code picks up another point for agentic capability, landing the final score at 4 wins for the alternatives and 3 for Claude Code. Okay, so here's why people leave Claude Code, and none of this is soft. The subscription cost with no model choice, token burn on long tasks, eating credits faster than you expect, and the confident but wrong output pattern, where it tells you it finished something it didn't, is a real productivity killer that shows up on complex refactors. That said, Claude Code still holds real ground in 2 spots. For deep autonomous agentic coding inside a repo, long-running sessions, complex multi-step tasks, managed context, its native agent loop is genuinely hard to match. And if you're already deep in the Anthropic ecosystem with MCP integrations and 1 million tokens of context per session, That integration depth is a pull that none of the alternatives fully replicate. If your main pain point is the monthly bill and the model lock-in, pick Aider. It's free, open source, bring your own key, and it directly fixes every cost and control complaint that drives people away from Claude Code. If you live in your IDE and want GitHub workflow integration, GitHub Copilot is your pick. If you want the richest terminal layer with Claude Code still under the hood, Warp is the move. Now, one thing the pricing page doesn't make obvious: Claude Code's Pro tier and your regular Claude subscription share the same token pool. So if you're using Claude heavily for other tasks, your Claude Code sessions eat into that same quota, and you can hit the wall faster than you'd expect from the monthly number alone. That's a real surprise the first time it happens mid-session. If you're still figuring out where Claude Code fits in the broader AI coding picture, I did a full ranked breakdown called 7 Best Claude Alternatives Ranked that goes wider than just the coding tools. It covers writing, reasoning, and general use cases where the alternatives actually pull ahead. That one's worth a look if you're rethinking your whole AI stack, not just the terminal agent.